Hello and welcome to Miniature Adventures. I'm Big Lee, and this week I wanted to talk about reading time and how I have decided to make some more for myself. So today's subject really got kicked off because I started researching a new project, and as usual I started by gathering several books that I already own, downloaded a few articles, even some academic papers, all to prepare for a particular project that I wanted to do. I even found some old magazine articles online which I was able to download. And then I struggled to realise that I'm actually going to find it hard to read all of this because I seem to have less time than I once did. And it did get me thinking about, does practising the hobby, painting, playing, blogging, vlogging, etc., interfere with research for it, interfere with our time to actually just sit and read? So once upon a time, I read a hell of a lot. And I mean, it wasn't uncommon for me to get through, a reasonable sized novel in a day or two. But then I was a student at the time, and I didn't realise just how lucky I was when they describe it as the best years of their lives. They're not kidding, but you never know it when you're there. And then, of course, I started work. Like everyone else, I started work and I would read on the train and at lunchtime. But I had less time than I did when I was a student. The job changed. I lost even more time as I started driving to work instead of commuting into London. And our reading was relegated to just lunch breaks and sometimes in the evenings. But then, of course, as I got older, you get more time pressures. Lunch breaks become a myth. There's chores to do, housework to do. You know what it's like. And before I knew it, I was getting home later, and reading was being pushed to just the weekends. Kids, work, chores, etc., and all of that time is very quickly under threat. Now, I'm old enough to remember the advent of the internet and social media, and it changed everything. It's been a huge boon and a curse to many people. For a start, for me anyways, found accessed lots of new ways to access material. I have to admit, being a bit of a hipster here, and early adoption of a lot of different platforms. And of course, the benefit of that over time is that I've had more time than some to learn how to use it properly. And as a little aside in this video, I'd say I've got 4 very simple rules for using social media. Consciously avoid endless scrolling. All of them are designed for that. Try not to fall into that rut. You can certainly soak up a lot of time by scrolling away. Don't get involved in troll wars. Don't feed the trolls. It's not worth it. Think carefully before you post anything. That's very relevant these days. But it's also the polite thing to do, the best way to avoid unfortunate discourse online. Think before you post anything. And don't get your news and facts from the internet. Again, we've learnt that in the last few years. Facebook is not a good place to learn information, and too many people do that these days, but I won't go there. I'm getting straight into politics. So they're my 4 rules for how to use the internet. But of course, the internet, for me anyway, has brought some very good and obviously, as I've mentioned, some bad distractions. It's very easy to end up scrolling away and wasting lots and lots of time. But it's also brought access to material and resources that I probably would never have found or had access to. There's lots of academic institutions putting academic papers and old books online, available to view for free, or sometimes with a small subscription. There's a lot of information on there, and providing you're getting it from reputable sources, it's a really good way of doing some research. But more importantly for me, the advent of the internet has brought an increased accessibility to the community, our wargaming community. And I've talked about this loads of times. It's the thing that for me makes the hobby so much more enjoyable than anything else I could do. That social side with my friends, but also that online community that keeps me going in between and meeting up with my friends. Blogging, and of course now vlogging, has become central to how I enjoy my hobby. It's not for everyone, so there's no criticism if you don't do that, but certainly it's something that I really enjoy doing, and I find it an important part of my hobby experience. I'm no longer just painting and playing games. So it's no wonder that I have even less time for reading. Now, of course, I still buy and read books, but I realise that I don't tend to read them cover to cover. I use books for research rather than for relaxation. And when I think about it, it's sort of an academic approach, something I learned at university, but it's sort of like I use key texts to help me locate information. I chase down facts that might lead to other pieces of material. I follow up on leads. I find new sources, and the circle goes round and around. And that's brilliant when you're researching a project, but you're not enjoying the whole book. It's very efficient, but certainly it's not the same as reading for fun. And sometimes I think it means I can miss out on the nuance in a text, losing some of the meaning and expression in the story. And if you've watched any of my videos, you'll know I'm all about the story. So with that realisation, I have been making a conscious effort to read properly again. Now, on another little aside, I actually find it difficult to read off of an e-reader or something like that. The temptation to look at your social media is too strong. It's too easy to scroll and browse rather than read on those things. And besides, I enjoy the paper experience. Call me old-fashioned, maybe I am. Nothing quite like the smell of an old book. Yes, I know I'm a weirdo. I really do like that smell of an old bookshop or a library. So my plan is simple, deliberately so, because then it's achievable. I'm going to set aside, or have been setting aside, a small amount of time each day to pick up a book, taking back at least part of my lunch breaks and going to bed a little bit earlier so I can read before going to sleep. It's not happening every day, but I'm making more of an effort to read properly, and not just factual books, but fiction as well. I love science fiction and all that sort of thing, and I used to lap that stuff up and read a hell of a lot. Historical fiction, so I'm going to be buying a lot more of that, or at least working my way through the books that I do have. And I guess I'll have to revisit this subject again in 6 months or so to evaluate whether I'm being successful or not, whether I've stuck to that resolution, if you like. A bit late in the year for a New Year's resolution, but you know what I mean. So the question is, how do you read these days? Do you recognise this trend that I've described, away from paper books and into scrolling away and not reading a lot in reality? Be honest with yourself. Is most of your reading actually on screens these days? Maybe you're comfortable with that. Maybe you've never fallen into that trend. But I suspect if you're come to this video via my blog or through YouTube, then you do engage with social media to a certain extent. So maybe you recognise those trends that I've been describing. And do you think that you should be reading more? Or are you happy with the balance that you've already set yourself? As always, I'd love to hear from you in the comments below, so we can discuss and chat about these sort of questions. So please join the conversation. So as always, if you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe and share. And if you want to keep up to date with weekly content from this channel, please tap the bell notification icon. So until next week, stay safe, keep gaming, and of course, keep rolling high.